Question 37. Evaluate cosecant 11 pi over 6 plus sine squared of minus 3 pi over 4 plus cos of 23 pi over 3. So in order to evaluate this trigonometric expression, there's two things that we must consider. The first thing that we must consider is the quadrant. And the reason we want to know what quadrant this is taking place in is because this quadrant tells us whether something is positive or negative. And by something, I mean the trigonometric ratio. The second thing is we want to look at the reference angle. And the reference angle is used to give us the ratio. So the reference angle, along with the special triangle, will end up giving us the ratio. So before we get started, I will just draw out my two special triangles just because I will refer to those. So my first triangle is a pi over 6, pi over 3, root 3, 2, and 1. And my second triangle is my pi over 4, 1, which of course is 1, 1 square root of 2. So in starting this question, the first thing I'm going to look at now is the quadrant, because I'm going to use that information to determine whether something is positive or negative. So 11 pi over 6 is my first angle. So what quadrant is 11 pi over 6? So if we think about it, 11 pi over 6 is a tiny bit less than 12 pi over 6. And of course we know 12 pi over 6 is the same as 2 pi. So when it comes to 11 pi over 6, it's almost all the way to 2 pi. So 11 pi over 6 is quadrant 4. And further to that, in quadrant 4, we remember all students take calculus. So cosine and secant are positive in quadrant 4. Cosecant would be negative. So I know I have a negative ratio. I'm going to continue on with the quadrant. Now I'm going to look at negative 3 pi over 4. Negative 3 pi over 4. We're a little bit more used to that one, except we're rotating in a negative direction. So we're 3/4 of the way to pi, but we're going in the negative direction. So that's quadrant 3. And of course, tan is positive in quadrant 3. But sine would be negative. So quadrant 3, we have a negative ratio here as well. And lastly, squeeze this one over here, is 23 pi over 3. So if we look at 23 pi over 3, that is a little less than 24 pi over 3. And 24 divided by 3 is 8, so that's 8 pi. So it's a little tiny bit less than 8 pi. So if we think about that rotation, right, we're doing a couple laps, but we're gonna, right, 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, almost to 8 pi. So we're in quadrant 4. And in quadrant 4, cos is actually positive. So quadrant 4, and we have a positive ratio here. So now comes the easier part, I think, if we know our triangles, and we should have these triangles memorized, is putting in the ratios. So my reference angle for 11 pi over 6 is simply pi over 6. And this trick works for any special angle inside my triangle. So my reference angle is pi over 6, so cosecant of pi over 6. I always think of sine. Sine of pi over 6 is a half, so cosecant is going to be, flip 1 over 2 around, minus 2 over 1. And the reason it's minus is what we determined earlier. So now we need addition. And now we're doing the 3 pi over 4 for sine. So that's 1. So that is 1 over root 2. So if we have 1 over root 2, and we have to make that negative, so negative 1 over root 2. Don't forget, this also has a squared. So we need to square this particular value. And lastly, cosecant of 23 pi over 3. Again, the reference angle of pi over 3. And we're doing cos of pi over 3. So that is 1/2. So we got to follow the order of operations, and I'll do my exponent first. Multiply. So 2 negatives will make it positive. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And root 2 times root 2 is 2. We have a half on the end as well. A half plus a half is a whole, so I'll do that part first. And a negative 2 and a positive 1 gives me a final answer of negative 1. So negative 1 is my final answer. And I love this question because it really gets us thinking about the quadrant, whether our ratios are positive or negative, and using our triangles.